You are listening to the Unusually Well-Informed podcast.
Welcome to the Unusually Well-Informed podcast. I'm your host, Tim Hampton. My unusually well-informed guest today is Dr. Mojgan Jadidi. Mojgan is a faculty member at York University's Lassonde School of Engineering. She has a PhD in Geomatics, a master's in Earthquake and Seismology Engineering, and did her undergrad in Civil Survey Engineering. Her work and her studies have taken her around the world, from Iran to Italy to France and to Canada. Mojgan, welcome to the show.
It's very nice to be here. Thank you.
My pleasure. So Mojgan, what subjects do you teach at York, and what careers do your students typically pursue?
Basically, I'm teaching the main geomatic engineering related courses as a technical courses for the upper year, usually third or fourth year. And also I do the teaching for the first year, which that's a really exciting part, because you see all of that exciting and the passion the student they come. I teach Renaissance Engineering 1, which is basically we are teaching a student problem solving, communication, ethic. And that's a kind of, open up for engineering education, which is student they take away from this and they go for the upper year courses.
That's very interesting. Now, as you know, I work at York University, and I watched Lassonde School come out of nowhere. And it strikes me that the idea of Renaissance engineering really fits it well, because it really seems to connect with other disciplines very well. So what kind of topics do you get into in Renaissance engineering?
We usually go what's really happening around us in the real world. So like in past year, pandemic was the main issue and it's still issue for us. So we went with the problem which engineer they are involved, or they have a key role for tackling this pandemic. The year before was all about how we can make energy consumption more affordable for everyone. And the year before was like the concept of, digital literacy, because we became so connected through the social media, and like we are quite open to everything, which is fine. But in other hand, when we are talking about the ethic and privacy of the people, then as an engineer, how we can tackle this, how much we need to share, how much we need to keep. So all sorts of stuff we really try to address. But it's not only one simple case study or one single case study. We usually go from like a very past, like a Challenger disaster, starting off with this topic, and then like going like further, like having that dilemma of the trolley issue. So like as an engineer, we may not encounter in daily life, but in some way, whether you are a software engineer or you are civil engineer or geomatic engineer or mechanical, so you're going to be in the situation which you need to decide. You need to decide for the well-being of the people, and then you have some choices to do. So how you're gonna translate all of this emotion and feeling and rightfulness to the machine to decide, which basically all of the technology going to that way. This is really hard work, and it's not easy to tackle. We kind of open up this kind of insight to our student, like saying that you come to engineering, welcome, with great pleasure to serve you and being your teacher. However, you need to think of the ethical, not issue, the ethical and moral part of the work we are doing, and just being open to accept this, the liability and the right for the people, and like serving to the public. So like we are starting to show them all of the cool tech is going on, at the same time saying all of the EDI related issue, or all of the that kind of discriminatory things happening through our algorithmic system. So like I apologize, I'm emphasizing a lot on the algorithms, because that's kind of related to what I am doing in my work. So that's why I'm concerned sometimes how we train our algorithm, how our machine is working, how I am doing the data analysis. Am I biased on that? So those perspectives we try to translate on the mind of our student or fresh student, which we hope they're gonna stay in this mindset and growing through the program when they go for the job market or going to grad school.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting, and you're quite right. That's definitely the challenge of the age is how we train our machines to treat us in the end, right? So I interviewed a management consultant or a business consultant, and she was it was Carrie Goya at the last show. And she was talking about explainable AI and the obligation to be able to demonstrate how the AI came to that conclusion. And so I don't know if you cover that at all in your exploration of algorithms.
Not directly, but we are touching to discuss, to consider that. And we basically try to introduce this from the first year, and then second, third year, and then fourth year, and then for our graduate student too as well. So not necessarily if I am building a bridge and I should be liable of that bridge now. If I am developing a transportation system which that gonna monitor this bridge, then I'm liable for that bridge too. So the question of where that liability will end, it is really a great question, and sometimes there is no border. So liability is kind of transferred from one person to another person. So a student, they really need to think that way when they come to the design, and then taking the actual technical courses. So that's why I say Angel 101, which I am basically dedicating my first year course on, that is my favorite one because of that reason. We started on some topic which touch everywhere and everyone, and we kind of grow from there. And then back to your question regarding the career path. I have been at York for 5 years now. This is time flies. So yeah, I started July 2016. So I have a few graduate, undergraduate, who started with me. Now they are graduated and they are working for the workforce. Basically, I have the geomatic engineering is a quite interesting discipline. It's very interdisciplinary, and it touches many majors. And if you look back to my own avenue, I have a kind of mixture of the civil and the geomatic. So if you want to ask me what geomatic means, okay, yes, we are working on the production and the analysis of the location-based data, and make it happen, that location-based information to everyone. However, for me, it's geomatic is more for those people who does like to be traditional in engineering, like civil engineering, and then who does like to bring a lot of the computer science concept on that, and then working on the data side. So geomatic engineering is really the place for doing this. So that's why my graduate students, they are quite in both extreme. They are working in a consulting company as a survey engineer, or they are working as a developer for the indoor outdoor location-based services, you already know what is GPS. We're all using our cell phone when we go outside. So all of that location-based app which we are using, it needs someone to be able to work with that type of the information and connect it to other information. So that's why I have a student, alumni, which they are working now in the tech company, which it's better not to name them, but quite well reputed company in Toronto. I don't want to keep it as as advertisement for them, but yeah, I'm just telling you. And or like the hardware side of the house, which student they are working on the development of the hardware for collecting data, location-based information like LiDAR or the GNSS based system, or even drone became so fascinated for everyone. Amazon and Walmart, they are partnering together to do the delivery to our house. So how this drone will take your address and bring your package safe and secure to your household, a geomatic engineer needs to be there to be part of the software development group and to make sure all of this information is aligned. So my students are quite in both a stream of like working on the construction side to prepare the layout of the design, and the other hand in the development side in the software development side for working on the tech.
That's fascinating. And you touched on when we first talked about Renaissance engineering, you touched on the one of the big issues of the day, and that is COVID and how it's affecting everyone. And one of the impacts, of course, is on how we teach and learn. How has, I presume most of the work you've done has been remote. How has that affected the kind of classes you teach?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, we are all doing remotely, and now we flip our class in a very short amount of the time. When the pandemic started, for me, it was like a challenge, because I needed to, in less than 3 weeks, I needed to deliver surveying course. So for those of people which they know surveying as a part of the civil engineering course or geomatic engineering course, it's 100% field-based. So you should go on the field and take the total station or level and then do the job and do the measurement. But then pandemic was there. So we had two ways of looking to that, either to cancel the course and just postponing and pushing to the future, or turn it to online. So I'm a challenge taker. And that was an opportunity, because I always had a dream of using augmented reality and virtual reality and gamification in my teaching. But time is the devil of everyone. Yes. And we don't have time. So to do everything which we wanted or we dream of. So pandemic for me was like a spark to work on something which I always wanted to do. I got this idea, why not to just develop a game which a student they can do surveying the same way which we are doing for the pilot training, the simulator, mm-hmm. and I was thinking that way. Then I started to share my idea with the Lassonde community, and I should admit that the dean office, they were very supportive of my idea, but even though at the earlier stage it was very crazy, it sounds crazy. And then I said, okay, let's find a company to build it, because it says we have only 3 weeks and I need to prepare the full course online, doing video and everything, like instructional lab video. So it's better to give to someone to build it. And then I did an interview with a couple of the company. The earliest timeline they were giving me a year. Mm-hmm. or 6 months, because they were all of a sudden they needed to mitigate even in their own way of dealing with the company. Then I look back to some of the colleagues at Lassonde, and I say, can I develop it by myself? And then I say, can you? And I said, yeah, I have a passion for the game development, and I already, because of my research, I already know how the 3D environment works and visualization works. So if I script out what action I want to have in the game environment, then I can maybe do it by one of the research assistant. So we can make it happen. It was scary, to be honest. I didn't sleep for a couple of days straight. So working, just scripting, making sure all of the action which I'm thinking on the field, when you are on the field, you are doing some stuff which you don't think even like for the how to treating the instrument, how doing the measurements. But when you want to script that and then machine will do that for you, then you need to really be very precise and very descriptive. So I prefer the first draft. I share it with one of my former students who is working for the surveying company to make sure all of the practice is correct, like up to date. And then I, with the help of one of my research assistant, which now he got his PhD, which at the time he was a PhD student with the digital media at York. So I discussed with him and he said, let's do it. Then with the help of him, we developed a game, the first time a surveying game, which a student, they could practice topographic surveying on that environment. And that was very exciting. In other side, I had so much criticism because everything you want to do as new, you always have two cohort of the people. The people, they admire you and they praise you for doing your crazy idea, and then the other people, they are like, no, you are not supposed to do that. So but for me, student voice and the student experience was much more important than the other thing, because that matters. A student, they needed to tell me how they learn, and it turned out they got it. They learned it, and they had a quite good reflection on it, and that was the idea for me. Just expand this idea for other courses. So in this day, my head is all around. So how I can do the virtualization of all labs, which I am involved directly, or some of my colleagues in other department or other program or our program, they're involved to the virtual format. Again, this stem out from what I am passionate about. It's all about data visualization and putting in the a virtual environment. So it is challenging, yes, but we are facing it.
So I have a question about surveying. Now I have an engineering degree, but it's not in civil, it's in mechanicals. I've never actually been out there doing a survey. But as somebody, who lives in a city like Toronto that's always being built and torn down and built again, it feels like people survey the same patch of land over and over and over. Somebody buys it, they survey it. Somebody wants a permit, they survey it. Somebody wants a building, they survey it. After they build the building, they survey it. Is that because the records are not kept well or not transferred well? Or is it because something's changed and needs to be discovered?
Definitely we have some changes in the boundary. Like when we put a boundary line, we don't put the wall. So if there is a fence or wall, then you don't need to redo it all the time for the property line. But for the building, any addition or any extension you want to do in your building, you need to make sure where you're gonna put those points or those part of a building.
Nobody likes a pie-shaped building.
No, even though okay, yeah, the geometry matters, but when if there is a demolition, so definitely that demolition should respect the boundary of the neighbors. So that's why you need to bring a survey, make sure the property of the neighbors not being affected. But if there is a new construction, then you need to make sure your building is located in the right logistic way. The policy which city force for that is being followed or not. So just one example, our city has a shape when we are looking from top. So it's not a just arbitrary shape. So all of our street has a meaning to be formed this way. So that's why city want to make sure we don't have that much bump and extension in some houses, even not only horizontally, vertically too. So that's why surveyor needs to be underground and make sure this is aligned with the neighbors, the edge or corner of the house. The facet is not blind, like creating the blind view of the neighbor, all of this. Like, as architecture, when you design, you put your masterpiece on the screen. Civil engineer comes and then build that, but where that gonna be placed on the ground, then the surveyor should be there to make sure that is in the right place.
Okay, good. It's an important job.
We need more and more surveyors. So
okay. So switching channels a little bit to talk about another aspect of your career, and that's the seismology. I know that Iran is a site of frequent devastating earthquakes, and you've done research to understand tectonics in the region. What conclusions did you reach about the fault line in the region and ways to predict future earthquakes?
Oh, that's quite ages ago. That question brings me to like 15 years ago, more than 15, maybe 16 years ago, when I was doing my master's degree. Yes, as you mentioned, Iran is one of the place on the world which has an earthquake in some part of the Iran in every day. So we have some degree of the earthquake, maybe in magnitude of the 3 and 4, or less than 3, which is not really sensible. And people over there, they got used to that shake. So what I did was when I graduated undergrad, and I was part of as a job. I got a job as a like a fresh engineer graduate in National Cartographic Center of Iran, which is basically equivalent to NRCan here. So it is like it has a multiple division. One of the division was working on monitoring the plate tectonic and the fault activity on the region for monitoring the earthquake forecast. So at the time, and still I think it's valid, it is not possible to say when the exact earthquake, like exact time earthquake is coming. However, it is a way we can monitor the behavior of our ground and somehow be prepared. Like preparation can go translate to the building code and making sure our infrastructure and building structure are strong enough to this kind of the like a force coming from the ground and that energy release, or it could be some kind of, if in the extreme case we see like there are like an abrupt change in the place, we can recommend for the evacuation of the region. So I was like from like a very beginning group, which they started to do that study, and I was part of that group, which we placed around 108 GPS around the country on the like most vulnerable area, which we were collecting GPS. They are still collecting GPS data 24 hours per 7 days. So we call it as a permanent GPS station. So which is a practice worldwide. We are doing that for like a seismological and technical tectonic studies. I was part of this. Like we did a commissioning. We did like finding the GPS, the right one for the place, like all of those things happen. And then when we kind of settled down, I went through that data processing step. So I did a lot of the contribution on like analyzing the data. So that was a place, by the way, my passion for the data part came to play. And then through that exercise, I got acquainted with a French researcher. So then one of the researchers over there, she introduced me to Erasmus Mundus program, which offered a scholarship to worldwide student for graduate study. And that was like a kind of, each time something should happen to our life. So that was a kind of like a new path for me to open up. And I applied for that scholarship for the master's degree, which I did in Italy and in France. And this scholarship usually students around the world, like around 500 or something, they applied for that scholarship, and only 25 they got it. Wow. So I was one of that 25. I was a lucky one. I was a lucky one, I still say. And I was a part of that international program. So these 25 students are coming all over the world. And that was a great thing about this program. Although we did in Italy and France, but our study language was English. So we were kind of isolated from the like people, like local people in one way, but in another way, we were so connected to each other with so many different cultures. So that's why it didn't really bother me that much. I did my master there, and then I prefer to continue on that topic. And my master thesis dedicated to study more for kind of finding the optimized way of the analyzing GPS data for finding the kind of correlation between happening of the earthquake and the fault, like a tectonic behavior on the region. And through that, like master thesis, my supervisor, like in European system, is very different from Canadian system. I mean, from North America. And so in European system, when project comes, like so many people they are involved. So my master is like that small part, but still it's being used like on and on, because I did like 10 years of the data analysis of the region. So then each time people, they just add up what I prepared. So then that is like ongoing publication is happening from the same data set and from the same result. It's not the same result, it's like augmented result. Mm-hmm. But I'm really happy for that contribution, because that's something, it's always giving the good to my people back home. And I can say that I'm doing the contribution to my people in a good way. And in other hand, I'm really happy what I have done at that time is still valid, still people using it, and it's getting more attention. But nowadays, I'm not really working on that kind of avenue at all. Like it's just something I did like 15 years ago for a couple of years, and now the data and the like whole scenario I'm working is completely different. But still, it has something in my heart.
Sure. So just out of curiosity, with all these GPSs that have been installed, for example, in Iran, during an earthquake, how much do they move? Like, I imagine it's pretty subtle, or can it be quite large moves? How far can a GPS move relative to another one when there's a seismic event?
So that really depends the magnitude of the earthquake, because personally, I was witness through my data analysis to identify subsidence, because we have that like a daily data, and that daily data has a 24 hours of the data, which in each 2-3 seconds, like the data is coming to you. So imagine that way. So then we have a huge time series of the behavior. Then you can see if something is going on in the region. You can see this trend. It's going up or down. So in the X, Y, and Z direction. So if you see so much difference in the Z direction, so meaning that you have a subsidence. If there are some building there, then you're going to have definitive liquefaction on that area, or like the whole demolition. But if you see a lot of the X and Y component of the coordinate are changing, and that can be in a couple of centimeters too. So it really depends how big an earthquake could be. The earthquake around. I don't want to just give you the arbitrary number, but earthquake like BAM earthquake, it has like a couple of centimeter, like a deviation from the place it was. So that spike is gonna appear right away to your data. Then you can if this is like, because earthquake is coming, it's all of a sudden, we call it a sudden release of the energy, but it is coming with some, it's a kind of preparation. So before, a few hours before, like we can see that abrupt change on the area. So then when data is tell you that abrupt change is happening, then you can do some kind of the evacuation, which that was not my time when I left country, but my colleague is still there. We chat sometime. There was a case which they could rescue, like a town, which there was a kind of the landslide was coming to the town, so they could rescue a small town in the mountain region. So this kind of the act can happen by just looking on that data.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So forgive me, because I may have gone too far into the Wayback Machine to look at your career, but tell me if this is still of interest to you. You have a frequently cited paper that examines the challenges of data sharing between GIS and BIM. So for my benefit and everyone else, what is GIS and BIM, and what are the untapped opportunities that come from better integration between the two?
That's a very great question, because that's my research right now.
Okay, great.
So GIS stands for Geographical or Geospatial Information Systems. So basically, all of the location-based data, it became like kind of the standard for all of the organization who are involved in the production of this kind of data. They generate it as a GIS system. And then BIM, which is a building information modeling. It is like a 3D representation of the building structure, which has information from architecture, from civil engineer, from the scheduling of the building, of the like a construction process, to the what kind of material we are using for each small, even like you can know what kind of gear you are using in that part of the wall. So all of this information being stored in the database, which being called as BIM. So why these two data model, I can say, important to be together. BIM provide very detailed and very important, valuable information about the building itself, inside of the building, component of the building. And then GIS, it has a very good reputation for the city-based data, environmental data, everything outside of the building. Although GIS has some footprint on the indoor building too, but it has a lot of power when it comes to the outside of the building. GIS community, they became so active since computer system came into play in the surveying, in the civil engineering, in the geography community. Then when the internet became so important, and we got that magic box in front of us, then GIS became more and more integral part of our life. Google Map is a GIS-based system, but we are just referring as a Google Map. So it has its own identity this day. Then as I mentioned at the beginning, all of the organization right now, from the city, environment, Ministry of Transportation, any private or public sector you can take, if they have a data, if they have a location-based data, they have a GIS system. And then from the civil engineer architecture side of the house, they have the CAD file, they have, and these days started to have the BIM, because BIM, that's another debate in that construction and civil engineer community. It is expensive. It is hard to make it, but once you have it, you're gonna have a really favorite for it. So you're gonna have a lot of advantage. So bringing these two data sets is gonna make us enable to understand everything going on with the building and outside of the building, and somehow connecting with them. GIS has a lot of the advancement in terms of the how to analyze the location-based data. Like navigation this day, we are not even thinking like Google Maps should tell me where to go. Mm-hmm. And we are not going to the mall this day, but like imagine if we go to the big mall, and many mall, they started to have their own app, which they call as an indoor Google Map. And they you just put where I am, here you are, and then I want to go like to Legoland. I have a daughter, so that's a place usually I end up to be, and then it shows you, and it's kind of you can follow your mobile app to go to the place you want to go. So that's kind of the functionality, kind of we consider as a right. It's a human right this day. Then, like bringing this two data set together is going to enable all of these kind of the application. Not only this, if you want to do the energy consumption analysis, then this data will help us, because GIS provide all of the data regarding weather and on the like a wind or like if we have a heat island in the city, like all of those sort of stuff is there. The traffic, number of people outside, and then inside the BIM is gonna give us like what is the material of this wall, like what kind of infrastructure we have in between of the wall. Like all of this can be used for doing a lot of the facility management and monitoring analysis. So it is important to bring them, because we are talking about digital twin. Digital twin cannot happen without these two enablers. GIS and BIM. So for having the virtual world.
Yes. So it does sound to me like these are I guess it's fair to say technologies or techniques that grew up separately, but now find themselves meeting.
Yes.
And it seems like that's really fertile area for exploration where they meet. And I'll give you an example that I'm sort of curious about. Whenever I get in the car, I always tell Walmart I'm coming, whether I am or not, because that's the only place I go these days, right? Have my food ready. And of course, the impact of everybody using curbside as opposed to going in the store, that has an impact on foot traffic, car traffic, the traffic patterns of people within the building, safety, delays, traffic snarls. There's so many things that go on there. Would Walmart be able to get enough information from the city to analyze ways of improving the way it organizes that experience?
Absolutely. Walmart can get some information from city, but Walmart needs to have some other sort of the data collection by itself. Like, for example, if Walmart wants to observe what is going around, so in terms of the traffic, maybe they need to have some camera around and then capturing the incoming and outcoming of the car and people, number of the people in the car. All of this, the technology exists. So, but the matter of how we integrate all of these technology and put with the right data and put in the right algorithm for the analysis, and then you can get the insight from data to be able to serve the community in the safer way. And that's true. Like another thing is like when we come back after pandemic, so we have that kind of, fear of the like not being in close contact with people. So definitely for a couple of months or year, maybe that's going to stay with us with that like being in the social distance. So we're talking about social distance. It is distance between us and someone else. So how we have our brain is really good in spatial cognition. So then imagine like our brain is good, but sometimes we don't want to use our brain. And then all of this app which we have in front of us, it should tell us where to stay and how to get there to be safe. So how we can do that without knowing our surrounding, our environment? Then BIM is going to give us the full picture, not only the geometrical shape and the dimension, also the like the type of the material, the like even like if the HVAC is working well or not, because all of this information is included in BIM, and it has a flow of the information on that. So then connected to a GIS system, whether this is a traffic system, whether this is a simple Google map, whether this is a Uber Eats, so anything else, then connecting all of this is not that easy. Mm-hmm. Because since two communities, they were working separately, individually in their own, we are maybe very good in advancing our own way, but when it comes to work with the others, we are lagging. So that's a really part is excites me, because I'm trying to find a way to bring these two communities together, two data sets together, and then use it for the like all application we just mentioned. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the doing this, there are like many ways of the doing. One way is just convert from one to another one. Then I'm the fan of the GIS, and then I'm gonna get everything in GIS. And another way around, I'm fan of the BIM. But when we are doing this process, which basically for a couple of years we did that, we lost the information. So imagine we don't want to have that lose information in your process. So how we can reduce this? Then we started to think, why not we think of the way internet's thinking? So then we got this concept of the web semantic, the way internet is sharing data, which me and you, no matter what is our operation system is, which browser we are using, we can see each other without any interference. The same way we have the information from the BIM and from GIS all together in a different application. So that's a way I am doing research now, and that's a topic we are really excited, and we are doing some sort of advancement on that. We are very early stage in the research yet, but we are aiming on the right direction. So I'm hoping to have more and more to share in the future with the community.
So one of the, you made me think of something that happened in a building I used to live in, which had an underground parking garage. And while I was living there, it used to be the fans were on all the time because cars, carbon monoxide and everything, but they got clever and they put in carbon monoxide sensors. And then they only had to run the fans when the cars were operating. And so it saved a lot of energy because that's heat and electricity for the fan. It strikes me that a similar analysis of how much traffic there is in a building could be used to decide how much we really need to refresh the air, how often we need to cycle the air. There's probably a lot of opportunities coming for engineers to play a role in people's safety when we all go back to shop.
Exactly. So what you just have an example. It's a great example of the using these two data set together, plus the concept of the IoT. So what you just mentioned, you add
RUT?
IoT is Internet of Things.
Oh yes, Internet of Things, IoT.
Yeah. So the concept of like bringing these three together. So the sensor is kind of the ongoing observatory system here. And then these two data sets is kind of the static. In some way, GIS can be dynamic, but BIM itself is static. It's like once we have it, then we have it. But IoT provides a lot of the ongoing information, and the GIS has, again, the dynamic information in terms of traffic, crowd, and environment, like weather, and all of these things changing. So that's why I prefer not naming it as a static, because it's dynamic. So then all of these three together is like working as a triangle. And this is a reality with what we are looking for the digital twin. So digital twin is not just replica of the physical world, but understanding and knowing what is going on in the physical world in the virtual environment. So what you're building there, it's a kind of, they are basically, you are using all of maybe with some sort of this technology to came with this idea, or maybe they don't use any of this technology, they just put the sensor. But for me, like having access to all of this data, I should be able to say more things rather than just on and off of the circulation system. Like when that red line is going to happen in terms of having more particle in the area. So those decision-making process for the machine can be retrieved from all of these technology together, which they are working like simultaneously. Yes, this is absolutely a great example of putting all of these tech together.
Definitely exciting times. Before COVID, I'll go back a little bit to 2018. You did a review of low impact development techniques. What does low impact mean in this context?
Okay, low impact development technique is we refer to as LID. It is a garden which you have in front of your building. So this is a way we can with not necessarily expensive infrastructure, we can kind of reduce the process of the runoff, the water, because of the heavy rain or like a climate change which is impacting our city, so our environment in general. Then all of this infrastructure, even like I'm telling you, it's basically it could be a garden or roof garden or like a rain barrel. So all of this can help to reduce this process, meaning that we are not sending out a lot of the water in a short amount of time to our stormwater collection. So this paper we collaborated with one of my colleagues in civil engineering department, also our PhD student. We are co-supervising that student together, who's gonna graduate in a few weeks. So she's gonna have her defense on June 10. So what we basically identified there is to find it out where we can put this infrastructure, this type of infrastructure, because it's not only one. We can have the previous pavement, we can have the roof garden, rain barrel, infiltration trench. So there are a lot of the different type of the infrastructure we can consider for our city. Just reduce this amount of the runoff to our stormwater collection system. If we do so, then having the flooding in our city can be reduced huge, just with a simple act. City of Toronto has started to do some, but we still have a really long way of going to provide all of these to all area. And it has this benefit, and also it has a lateral benefit too. Like when we have a garden in front of like our house or places, so then that's like, it's beautiful. It's a good look. It has a fresh air for us, and it has a psychological impact too. So that's why we became interested how we can use this technology and making sure we have it in everywhere, and what type. So we came with a kind of the idea of how we can optimize this process to find the best site for which we refer as a site selection, and also what type of the LID could be beneficial in a certain area. So we did a study on Toronto, and for the proof of concept to see whether our approach is valid for the other city. We did some study on the city of the Vancouver and city of Montreal too.
So Toronto strikes me as very built up, but then you go a little bit north, like where I am. I'm up in Maple, and there's a lot of new subdivisions still. And one of the subdivisions I lived in, it had an enormous storm pond, which I think is an example of what you're describing, because not only does it it can fill up and then slowly drain into the storm system, but also you have a beautiful pond to walk around.
Exactly.
Right? It introduces some nature into the new subdivision.
Exactly. Yes, absolutely. That's a great example of a larger LID, because LID could be from the very small scale, like in the garden in front of your house, or a rain barrel, or the rooftop garden, to that huge infrastructure like a pond, and it brings a lot of habitat there. So it is nice to see some goose is having a habitat there. So like right. It is. That's why I'm telling you, it's not only the like built environment impact, it has the psychological impact for the community too.
So moving to another topic now, business intelligence is a method to transform data into useful analysis. You've written a paper that applies a business intelligence approach to studying coastal risk. Mm-hmm. What advantages does this approach offer?
So, as you just started the definition, business intelligence is helping us to identify the requirement of a system which we are working. So having this in mind, like that requirement and the need of an organization, then having this as your data analysis lenses, then you can identify those key parameters. And then those key parameters, when it comes to the coastal risk assessment, I wanted to identify what are the key parameters to generate this kind of risk, and then like definitely when it's coastal, so then we have erosion, and erosion is a natural phenomenon. However, we can come up with some way of protecting our built infrastructure. So, and then we need to identify those too. So, like identify which, if we have a road, if we have a bridge, if we have a seawall, or if we have a parks, or some of the residential area which is close to the coast. So all of these need to be identified. So I use this idea of the business intelligence data modeling, I can say, to identify all of these key parameters and key vulnerable parameter. So targeted them, then come up with showing through a system, kind of the dashboard, which like a different ministry or different stakeholder, they could use it and see it like from the very abstract view. So what's going to be the risk for that neighborhood, to going in the very I say larger scale, but maybe it comes in the mind in the smaller scale, in the very like a small region level of even the building or the portion of the road segment, and seeing what's going to happen, or how this happened by having erosion in this area. So again, the impact is just helping the stakeholders to make a better decision making. So like better decision, informed decision by just looking to this data. This is a way of you put the data in the way machine can understand, come up with some recommendation based on the color and that like a dashboard and then like a chart. But at the end of the day, human needs to decide based on that. So then it's going to be understandable for the human.
So one of the things, you humans are often hard to convince, and especially when the data is uncertain. And so I wonder if one of the ways you wrestle with that, you talk about fuzzy set theory. And I wonder, is that related to uncertainty, and how does that improve decision making?
Yes, absolutely. When it comes to decision making, it's somehow we ended up to do the binary decision making. But in reality, if especially when it comes to the natural disaster, it doesn't work that way. You cannot say this neighborhood has the risk of the 5, and then the neighborhood just across has a risk of 3. So my idea was like the way we are representing the risk and giving like, so how we are doing that. We're segmenting the area, and then we allocate that indicator of the risk, which basically coming from a series of the multi-criteria analysis and putting a heuristic equation, and then you have a number between 1 to 5. Okay, so then my idea was like, it cannot be only 5. Maybe it's a 4.5. Maybe it is 3.5. So how come we cannot show this? Then this idea of the using fuzzy set theories helped me to come up with that uncertain area and then uncertain portion of the parameter. The parameter which I just mentioned in the business intelligence parts, like identify those key parameters, and then you identify them, and then you need to classify them in order to be able to put in the risk model, because that's the way we are dealing with the decision model or risk model, which is like some type of the decision model. So then this classification, again, you're kind of, you're putting another label on it. So there are a lot of the human interaction, even the machine is doing, but that's a human interpretation to divide the data in the way which we understand. Or we perceive it before. So that's why I came with that idea of like, how can I capture the uncertainty? Sometimes if we have a multitude of the data redundancy, then we can calculate the accuracy and we can calculate the precision of our phenomenon or our model. But in the case like that, with this multi-criteria, people, they need to tell me, okay, if erosion rate in this area is more than this, if the slope is more than that, then the risk is high, then you're going to be in the like a multitude uncertainty affecting your results. So that's why the fuzzy set theory helped me to identify that in the fuzzy way. So I'm not working with the integer number, I'm working with the real number. And that's the whole way of the standardizing the data and like putting in the equation. And then like instead of having like one zone this color, another zone that color, we have a degradation of the color from one zone to another one. That is going to help a lot, especially like when it comes to insurance company. Like insurance company, they have that kind of binary impact. Maybe your house is not really located in the flood zone because your house is just like a kilometer away from the river, and you are on the top of the hill, but still, because of you are part of this neighborhood, you should pay the high price for the insurance. But like by this approach, the degree of the risk for you is not going to be high because of the certain aspect which you have around you, and then your insurance money gonna be less than your neighbor because of this kind of the analysis behind. So that's the way we can approach that. Like not only paying the less money, but just like if you are, for example, mayor of the city, you want to allocate the money on some places or giving this incentive to some people to do some protection in their building and in their household. So how you can do that? So my goal was to provide a better insight for the policymaker and the decision maker to have a sophisticated way of the representation of the risk rather than just binary one.
So this is interesting because I think it connects to fuzzy logic.
Yes.
And the first time I heard the phrase fuzzy logic was, I believe it was a Mazda 929 transmission that claimed to have fuzzy logic. And I think what they were implying was it didn't just factor in how hard you press on the gas and how fast the engine is going, but whether you're cornering. So it's not fuzzy as much as it's more accurate, really. You're saying that there are more factors involved and more, it's not 1 or 0. So for example, I think that a 5 is worse than a 1 in your schedule of whether I'm going to have a flood. So if it's 3 and it's staying at 3, I might think, okay, well, but if it's going 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, it's time to roll up my pants and find a solution, right? Yes. So you can see things going on more. So that's really interesting. Fascinating work. I have so many questions, and we're running out of time. But I'm gonna quickly go through a couple of things because there are some themes in your work I want to explore. One is you've published research on autonomous and semi-autonomous marine navigation. You point out that the majority of maritime accidents are caused by human error due to fatigue or misadjustment. So your paper gets into something called DB scan. Mm-hmm. What is DB scan, and how can it help prevent maritime accidents?
So DB scan, it is a like cluster-based method. So it's a density-based spatial cluster method. So we basically we try to. Okay, what we have as data, maybe it's like a step back. So what we have as data in the Maritime is, we refer it as an AIS, which is giving you the position of the boat or the vessel in per second or per 2 seconds, so depend. But this is being recorded by device, and usually that information should transfer to some control station around that area. So that's a kind of consider for the traffic control of the area too. Then, like when looking to this data, so you can right away you can recognize that where is the pattern of the road on the marine system. It's like, okay, so water is the open space, so you can go anywhere you want. You don't have a road, but indeed we have a kind of trajectory we need to follow. So like not necessarily you can just go in the zigzag. So you need to really follow a certain trajectory. So DB scan is as I mentioned, the clustering data mining method, which help us to identify the different pattern or like a series of the data which they are correlated with each other, whether this is based on their location or identity, or like this data coming from the same vessel or not, then we could recognize them and we could classify them and then like finding out their trajectory. So why we are doing this? First is finding this pathway, the maritime pathway, and also if there are some abnormal behavior from some of the vessel can be recognized right away, because that's a pathway you should always go, but you are in somewhere else. So and then collecting all of this data and having the like digging down the historical data, it's going to help us kind of predict if you're based on the location and the heading of, because that AIS is it's collecting not only GPS information but the heading and direction of the boat too. So if the based on the heading and the direction, then we can kind of forecast what is the next step. So that's why that connect us. The outcome of this research connect us to autonomous vessel navigation. So which can be in the future being used for that one. And this is another research we are doing with one of my colleagues at Geomatics engineering program. Our master student, he graduated from this, and he got lots of recognition because of his approach. Because the reason is what we are saying, like if you belong to this category, is not really based on the distance, Euclidean distance between one point to another point. We have another definition of distance, which we consider as a Mahalanobis distance. So like Mahalanobis distance, like you are not going to like the shortest path between 2 points. It's like how much you have the correlation between those 2 points, and then we consider this is the shortest Mahalanobis distance or not. And then if this is true, then we have certain constraint. And then if this is true, then we consider this point or this vessel belong to this cluster. So that was a quite interesting project we did, and it stemmed out with a crowdsourced project which we did it with Ministry of the Fishery and Ocean Canada, with like many partners across Canada. And we are hoping to continue on that because there are a lot of the exciting results we can see from this research can be useful for the autonomous vessel for the maritime application. If this is the case, then the same way you are enjoying your autonomous driving on the road, then we're going to have the same concept for the maritime.
Yeah, I want to explore autonomous vehicles with you, but to stick with the ships for a moment, you said something interesting about, it's not always a direct shortest line between 2 points that ships would go. And I imagine one of the reasons is because you don't want traffic in this direction coming too close to traffic in this direction. So there's probably an expectation that people would veer away from the perfect line. And so the better you understand that, the more you could save fuel by tightening up that margin of safety, for example. Is that one of the possible outcomes? You could improve speed and efficiency?
That's true, because when we are talking about autonomous vessel, we are not just aiming to tell the machine goes next point. We want to have an efficiency in terms of the fuel and the speed too, and definitely for the safe trajectory. Yes, that's a path we are going through.
So would research in this area have helped prevent navigation errors like the ones that caused the Ever Given to run aground in the Suez Canal?
That's a really tough question. Hopefully, I don't know. Stay tuned. Maybe next year I'm gonna have an answer for
That'll be another project. Okay.
Yeah, that's gonna be another project. But yeah, we have a lot of the good approach in the tech, in the data side, which we can get use of them for like solving this kind of the issue. However, we need to be really conscious of what we are using and where we are using. So there are sometimes human factor and human perception and human interpretation too. So like, I don't want to go through that political conversation anymore, but I hope one day we can have this kind of a system which machine communicate with the machine and reduce the human intervention in between. Then we may have less of this kind of incident.
So you touched on, and thank you for touching on this, because it is a subject that's interesting to me, and that is autonomous driving. And you even mentioned LiDAR. And we talked a little bit before the show, and you know that I'm a fan of everything that's going on at Tesla.
Yes.
And Tesla has stated publicly that they're abandoning LiDAR altogether. They're going to rely on vision only, on cameras only. Do you agree with that approach, or do you think that LiDAR should be part of the system for autonomous vehicles?
I don't want to compete with anyone or disagree with Elon Musk. He's an ambitious person. So, what my takeaway from this public speech from Elon Musk was he believes LiDAR is expensive. That's why he doesn't want to use it, but he used it for his SpaceX mission. So LiDAR provide a lot of the depth information to us, not only LiDAR itself, but like the whole integrated sensor which we can put with the LiDAR system. So so that's why like going through autonomous driving, it is really hard to say we are not going to be in use of LiDAR, because there are always certain case camera will fail. We saw some of the accident happen. By the way, that was one of the cases study in our Eng course. So the Tesla accident, because of that reflection of the white, like a white part of the. It was like
it was a trailer, right? A semi trailer on the highway. Yeah.
Yes. So so camera itself, like, okay, I did a lot of photogrammetry, and I really love, and I'm really fascinated by the photogrammetry and the computer vision, but we need to accept that it can fail, and then just having this. Maybe for now we are okay. We don't need it. But imagine if we are in the situation which camera fail, then do we have any alternative? That's my question to the producer of the Tesla. Yeah. I'm really interested to know what's going to be the backup plan rather than the camera. And I am. I know, like, people, when they have their own idea, they have some reason behind. So I'm really interested to see the next public speech about that. But I need to mention, like, I did that. I need to repeat that. So LiDAR, it is still valid, but just expensive. Maybe down the road when we have the cheaper version of LiDAR, then that's not going to be an issue to put it in any car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in some ways I feel like the idea that LiDAR is expensive is just sort of an excuse, because it's not going to be expensive forever. It's in new phones. So I think that my suspicion is it's a little bit stubborn, because the cars he's already built don't have LiDAR. So he can't say they will be automatic someday. But also he said something interesting that at first I thought it felt like he was being a little reckless, but then he said something interesting, and that is, well, what do you do if the camera and the radar or the LiDAR doesn't agree? You're just burdening your processing power. You need to get to the point where you have enough intelligence built into the system to actually trust one or the other. That made a little bit of sense to me. I mean, history will tell which way to go.
We had this discussion. I brought this video to my class, to my upper year class, when we were working on the integrated data. So like and the different system in the computer vision part. And this is really valid question. So we don't know yet.
We'll see.
Yeah, maybe we need to do the research on it and find it out.
I'll read that paper for sure. One of the stranger results of COVID is a sudden surge in the cost of lumber. And in 2015, so again, I'm going into your history here, you contributed to a paper on the wood supply chain. So I have to ask you, what's your interpretation of what's going on with lumber these days?
I don't know, really. People, they are just building a lot. That paper is coming, like, my contribution was more on the business intelligence side of the system, rather than the wood supply
the cost chain. At Home Depot.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm really concerned about that too. I was worried for, like, some of the friends, they were mentioning mentioning, the house price is just skyrocketing because of this, and this is really something we need to think. Like this old young generation, they are fresh in their career, and they want to build family, and they want to have, and then you see all of this inflation is happening. Hopefully, I mean, if this is the case, if the lumber price is going up, so hopefully it's going to create a job in Canada, which Canada is a place for this supply chain. I have a personal interest on that, so that's why I'm telling you. But if this is the case, then that's going to be something helping economy and helping our young generation. And then you can just justify this. Okay, there is a need, there is a demand, and there is a workforce for that. But if just going up, and nothing is happening, that's something we need to hope not happening and stop from that.
So we talked a little bit about your journey, from Iran to Italy and France and then to Canada. But we didn't talk about why engineering in the first place. How did you discover that interest?
Being engineer, it was not really strange for me, because I am coming from a STEM-based family. That's very funny. When you're in Iran, then if you're a good student, then you have a two way of going, whether engineering, another way is medicine. So I was not a person for medicine. I thought I can be, but then maybe in the grade 3 I realized no, I'm not. And I can say from grade 3 I was really determined to be an engineer. Wow. And because of family history, and there was an encouragement for that too. So why I choose civil engineers in the first place? My passion is architecture. So I had very much fascinated by the architectural city. So I want to contribute on building, and that was at the beginning. And then I realized, and we have that kind of the national exam system. So then you're gonna be in the pool with people, and I realized that okay, there is some other option for me too. So, and I ended up to be in the civil engineering department. But when I was through that civil engineering program, I was like, I really interested more on data rather than the physical world. So turning physical world to virtual world was much more interested for me rather than just being outside on working on the field. I still enjoy to be on the field, but like when I'm bringing the data from the field, that's more joy come to me. So that's why I just continue and continue on being on the data part of the building and infrastructure. So I still love the bridges, and I'm really amazed by bridges structure, but in the virtual world. So,
what an incredible journey then for somebody who's interested in architecture to find themselves in Italy and France. I mean, that's been a big part of the experience too, right?
Yes, I enjoyed every moment of my my life in Europe. I'm still falling in love with Europe, and I each time I have an occasion to go for the trip, and I'm just like begging myself to choose somewhere else, but still I'm going back to Europe, particularly France, because we have a lot of the good memory there. So yeah, it was great experience being part of that international program. Now I have a friend all over the world. Last night I was talking with one of my friend from China, and now he's doing. He's a top researcher in the earthquake domain in China, and he was like asking me to do some kind of collaboration with GIS and BIM with the earthquake topic. And I said, in Canada we don't have that much in the earthquake topic, but why not? So let's go back to the olden days.
Have you been to China?
No, not
okay. Because sometimes, I mean, if you're interested in civil engineering, the things they're doing over there are staggering. Like they'll have 2 points at this elevation and a farm down here, and they'll just build a bridge for kilometers over the top of it. Like it's incredible what they're doing.
And their land is quite shaken often, so they have an earthquake issue too. So
Yeah.
but that's another factor which they have. They're like a big institute in the earthquake engineering to just doing a study, all geotechnical study to make sure the bridges, their roads, and their building are strong enough for the upcoming earthquake.
Yeah. So let's recap. So your work prevents ships from colliding. You reduce property damage and threats to human life from earthquakes, and you prevent coastal erosion. Basically, you prevent disasters. But then you also study disaster management. So what does that field look like? Where are you looking at disaster management?
It's definitely is interdisciplinary subject. It cannot be just one. Like you need to have a dirty hand in many things to be able to understand the process. It's a system. That's for me. This is a system, and this system need to be identified and put in the right place and have a data for that. So if you don't have a data for that, then you're going to be in desperate. You don't know what's going to happen. And then when you are on the event, you don't know how to act. So that's why for me it's better to put it that way. It's a system of system because it's coming like from multiple systems. So disaster management can consider as a discipline which someone wants to pursue on this as a degree needs to be good in many things. Not good, but knowledgeable or open to learn. So for me, I learned it just by being involved in multiple projects, but I didn't have any degree on that, but I did a lot of the self-study. I'm still learning. So every disaster has its own challenges, its own way of understanding because human being evolve. So, and human being is the most complex.
We're the most random part.
Yeah, and it's the most complex element in the study. So I'm an engineer. I try to educate myself in the social study too, because I believe it's an integral part of my job to do so. But still, I feel I have a lot of lack of knowledge on that. So that's a part I'm trying to work on myself to learn more about human behavior.
Yeah, me too. That's my project too. So my last question is, what projects are you working on or contemplating right now, and what impact do you hope they will have?
So BIM and GIS is on like a number one project, which I have a discovery grant for that, and I'm working on. And like aligned with this, I am working with like mostly project which involve 3D environment. So that's why I became like directed a little bit more focus on the gamification and virtual reality application development, especially for the engineering education perspective. So that's, I can say that's another project which I'm excited about and I'm working on. There is another collaboration which I have with the University of Denmark since last year. This is a completely new era for me. It's all about quantum computing. So because one of the challenges I have for myself when it comes to data analysis is often I ended up to have the result in like a very long time. So I don't want this. So that's why I started to be a part of a project, like a collaborative project with the University of Denmark. They are all chemical engineer and biomedical engineer. They are not geomatic or civil or any sort of this. But what we have all in common is like we are all considering the process, which for them it's a molecular process. For me, it's like a data process and like a city process and building process. So that's why we started to think how we can start to bring this to engineering education first. So like teaching our student in undergrad level a glimpse of the quantum computing for the sake of my own project too. So now we are working on that to come up with the series of the workshop with this regard. So I can say that's like a three avenue of my life right now. I can have more, but I prefer to just narrow it down.
It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, I have a family too, and I have a so
very busy.
Yeah, so but that's really excites me in life. So
yeah. Well, and it's very entrepreneurial. That's one thing I find fascinating about a faculty member's life is you it's almost like you're getting funding for a movie, and then you do the movie and then you move on and collaborate with other people and do another project. It's very exciting. Before I let you go, because you brought up the quantum computing, am I right in thinking that quantum computing and AI are complementary technologies? Like, would quantum computing be a good place to put AI? Is that one of its justifications?
That's a very good question, because right now we are trying to implement some of the basic machine learning algorithm in the context of the city analytic or urban analytic problem, like a transportation, which we have a lot of the data involved. And like we are comparing with the quantum computers based algorithm, because like the way we are looking in classical algorithm for the computation, it's completely different when we want to implement in the quantum one. So that's why we're in the early stage of developing this type of the algorithm in both to see how we can do that, and first of all, and then whether we have the satisfactory result or not. One of the challenges, again, it's very early, but one of the challenges we have is our hardware is not ready enough. So like we have a really good player, IBM or D-Wave, they are doing great stuff, but still, like when it comes to the actual implementation, there are a lot of challenges we need to tackle. So that's why I don't want to go on deeper, because we are in the early stage of our research, but we are aiming and we are hoping it's going to have impact on the AI-based application. And that's our way, our path to go.
That's excellent. Thank you so much, Mojgan, for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. That was a great pleasure to talk to you.
It was a fascinating conversation. My guest today was Dr. Mojgan Jadidi. My name is Tim Hampton, and you can reach me at tim@unusuallywellinformed.com. Thanks for listening. I hope you will subscribe and join me for the next show with another unusually well-informed leader in business and technology.
Thank you for listening to the Unusually Well-Informed podcast.
The opinions expressed by the host and guests on the Unusually Well-Informed podcast are their own and do not reflect that of their employer or any other affiliation.